Hey, it's Sylvan, and this is the Handpan Podcast. On the podcast, we tell the transformation stories of people like you and me whose lives have intersected with this instrument called the handpan. The transformation is often more than just finding a new hobby. For some, it's discovering they can be creative for the very first time. For others, it's belonging to a community of like-minded people. And for yet others, it's finding their purpose and pursuing their life's work. It's pretty cool to watch. Today's guest on the podcast is my new friend, Jaden Chavez. The handpan also changed the trajectory of his life. At a very strategic time, I should say. His is a powerful story of finding the things that light you up and pursuing them passionately. Here's my conversation with Jaden Chavez. Okay, so here we are.
Yeah.
Jaden, it's good to have you.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Yeah.
It's truly a pleasure.
Yeah, likewise. We just had an awesome jam.
Oh, it was too good.
It was a classic too. It was a D minor jam.
Yeah.
Like in the old days. in the first 10 years of this instrument existing, all the hungs were in D minor for the most part, almost. And so feels good to get back into this key, this tone.
It's almost nostalgic for you, huh?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a classic handpan kind of character, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, think of like Daniel Wapples and all that.
All these guys, yeah. And now obviously it's all over the place across different keys and different pitches.
Like there's even a blues scale, like for jazz and all that.
Yeah.
It's truly, it's getting pretty versatile now, so that's really cool.
Do you feel like you would enjoy having a super specific sound model, like a blues scale, or do you want to have more open possibilities with an instrument?
I think the fact that it's so limited leads to it being so handpan-esque. Is that a good word? Yeah. Because I feel like if you have very versatile instruments like a piano, it gets really too complex, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, you can play any scale, any rhythm, any whatever you want, but at the cost of having to learn a lot of training, and it gets really complex, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But the handpan, the fact that it only is so limited to however many notes you can fit on that little dome, leads to it being so unique and what's the word? Creative freedom?
Yeah.
Is that the...
Yeah. You're right on the money.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the way I've heard it described, which is not a perfect analogy, but if a family has children in a front yard and there's a road that passes right next to the front yard, if they want to give their kids freedom to play in the front yard, they might decide to put up a fence, which protects them from getting run over by cars. And so the limitations, which means they can't go past the fence, actually gives them freedom to explore that play area.
Safely, and yeah, I know what you mean.
And so we have limitations with this instrument. But within those limitations, we have complete freedom to explore.
Exactly.
And if the handpan were like a cheap xylophone or some sort of cheap toy where the notes would be pure tones with no overtones or no harmonics, it would be fairly limited.
Yeah.
But we know that there's just a wealth of sounds within the instrument. Right, the partials, the Helmholtz, the attack, the sympathetic resonance between the notes. So it's simple, but it's not simplistic.
It's very complex how it sings with itself. You know, it harmonizes with itself because there's so many different parts and bits to the handpan, and every note is so versatile, you know? Like there's like 3 notes in one, pretty much. And you don't get that with a lot of instruments.
You're right.
Yeah, that's again why the handpan's so unique.
Totally. Even like with a center note, you might have 5 notes. You know, you have the fundamental, the octave, the fifth, and then 2 partials tuned into the shoulder. So there's really a richness to it, whether you play with your flat finger, with your thumb, with your palm. Like there's just a lot of possibilities.
And that's why I prefer playing hand percussion, is because you can get so many different sounds and timbres with just your hands. And the fact that you don't need like a mallet or anything, you can just play anything. And that goes for anything. I drum on tables myself, pant legs or whatever,
Learning on tables, right? Isn't it the best? The best teacher.
Honestly, that's how I've learned how to play all hand percussion, and that's how I got really good at it. I would just drum on a table or like anything that had a good bass to it, Like my dad had this big old water tank in his backyard once, and I hit it with my fist, and it made the biggest bass, and I was like, oh, I could use this. So
maybe maybe we're onto something here, because I think, like yourself, I taught myself to play percussion on like a school table or whatever I could get my hands on. And so, unlike other musical instruments that have a high entry barrier, the handpan is accessible, like playing on your lap or on a table. And so it just resonates. It just connects, right? It clicks right away.
Yeah. It's because it's kind of something natural to do, at least for me anyways. I'm a very fidgety person, like shaking my leg right now, I'll fidget pencils all the time. And now that I learned hand percussion, that's my new fidgeting toy, is just to drum on stuff at the bonus of practicing. So a nervous habit is now benefiting me in like that musical way, which I think is really cool.
Yeah. So Jaden, give us a little bit of an introduction, saying maybe where you're from, where you live now, how old you are, just a little bit about your background.
Okay. So I grew up in a tiny little town in New Mexico called Tularosa, right? And the population is around 3,000 right now. I totally forgot. It's small, tiny little place. So I grew up there for a majority of my life, living on a farm with my dad. And I feel like the school was very basic, and everything was very basic. But there's a huge sense of community there that I really enjoyed. Everyone was like family. And, that's why I loved living there. But I wanted to explore, At the time, because my mom lived over in a city like an hour away called Las Cruces, and the family over there my auntie, which was over there, had a piano, and she would always play it. And my little self, I was probably, I don't know, 6, 7, something like that, and I got into it, and I was like, wow, like teach me. And so she'd teach me little songs like Chopsticks and like little things like that, and that totally sparked my musical journey. I began learning piano, and I started getting really good at it, and I was like, you know what? I want to play in an orchestra. My school doesn't have an orchestra. We never had music. I mean, we did, but it was very basic, like maracas and like little things, like elementary stuff.
Yeah.
So I moved with my mom into Las Cruces, and I went to middle school there. And I joined a little orchestra in Seattle Middle School, and it was good. I began to learn the cello, and that was a new instrument, and I was psyched. It was such a beautiful instrument, and I started getting really good at that. And then I eventually decided, you know what? I want to take this to the next level. And I started going into the big orchestras like Southwest Music Academy. That was the big one in New Mexico. So I joined that, eventually moved to Houston and joined the best orchestra I've ever been in. I made regional competition there. It was such a beautiful thing, but I don't know. I guess my heart was belonged in the desert, and Houston wasn't a great place for me. It was kind of sad. I thought like the greenery and the beauty of being there would be better than like the boring desert, I thought at the time. But then I realized how suffocating trees are. It was like blocking the sun, and I was like missing home a lot. Anyways, I got really sad, and eventually was like, I can't do this, So back to New Mexico I went, back to my little town. And there I was, with little bit of instruments. I didn't know what to really play because I didn't really have like an orchestra to play with. So I just kind of played my own stuff. But for the most part, I fell out of that musical whatever. But then I discovered the Rav drum and the handpan. I showed my dad, and I was like, look at this thing. And he was like, okay. that's cool. He's like, can you make it? And I was like, no, I don't know how. I was like, I need to research. And so I did a bunch of research and eventually came across the Rav drum on that, thing. And I was like, this is like the affordable handpan. I thought it sounded cooler. It was relaxing. That's kind of the tone I wanted. And I was like, okay, let's do this. So I started working up enough money and eventually bought myself a Rav. Got that. And I was like, all right, cool. This is good. And then I moved to Phoenix. Right. And so in Phoenix, I got back into orchestra. I got back into a big school and I started doing music again. My music, cello and piano, everything started taking off again, and I was good. And I was busking at the time. This was my first time busking with the Rav, and I was a little nervous, but I met really, really cool people. I literally just sat on the floor and my little like hat in front of me and played. And I wasn't concerned about making money. I just wanted to share this instrument, because I thought of how beautiful it was. And that's something beautiful about this instrument is you can meet so many great people, because I feel like a lot of people just walk by musicians like it's just like they see us like beggars sometimes, just looking for spare change. But other people see the beauty in the music, and they'll always like come up to me and talk, and it's great. That's something I haven't done because I'm too antisocial for my own good. But it got me out of my shell. And at this time, I started really getting into handpan music. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to try to work up for one. And I busked and started working up for a handpan. And then one day in Sedona, it was a very rainy day. And whenever we went, because the rain eventually stopped, and it was like bad thunder, like the place was flooding. I was walking in the little like tourist shops just to get out of escape the rain. And I met some guy named Chad. And he had a handpan. This was the first time I've ever seen one in person, and I was like, oh. I talked to him, and he saw that I played the Rav, and he's like, you want to play it? And I was like, yes, this is amazing. And I played it, and I sounded actually good at it, and it was like, because I had experience with the Rav at the time, and so it was good to play with that. And he, I feel like, really, really inspired me and turned me on to the handpan. He's a traveling musician. I don't know where he is now. Maybe you can hear this. That would be cool. But yeah, you've inspired me, Chad. And so, yeah, he's the one who really sparked the handpan journey. See, and that's something I want to do, is make an impression on someone like that with music.
Yeah, and there are so many gold nuggets in what you just shared. First, I want to come back to something you brushed over really quickly, which is when your dad asked you, can you make it? Is that something you can make? Was he implying that you could possibly make a handpan from scratch at home?
Yeah. I mean, we lived on a farm, and like I said, we had a lot of just tools lying around. We had a shed. I had the tools I really needed to. And at the time, I was actually making didgeridoos because, I'm in the desert. Agaves grow just naturally. And so whenever they put out the flower stalks, they dry out. And the outside is hard like wood, but whenever you cut it and open, the inside is real pithy and it feels like styrofoam. So I started making didgeridoos, and I was hoping to, use those to buy my handpan and all that. And, I was making instruments, and I showed this to my dad, and he was like, wow, that's different. And he's like, what is it made out of? And I was like, it's steel. And he's like, I bet you can make one out of like a barrel. And so I did research, and what is it? I came across the Caribbean drum. And I knew what the Caribbean drum was, but I never really delved into the history of it and how it works and the mechanics. And I was like, I could do this. And I was like, it's basically a controlled dent. Boy, was I wrong. I mean, it was, I did more research and realized how incredibly complex this instrument was. But I tried anyways. I knew that I was going to crash and burn. So I literally went outside into this junkyard that was right by my house. And got this rusty barrel and rolled it all the way back to my farm, where I got a sledgehammer and hammered a big old shell. And I just kept hammering until I came across the shape of the handpan. I kind of knew the dimensions and the how the shapes of the tone fields would work in correlation with the dimples and all that. And I don't know. I bit off more than I can chew. Right now, it's in the shed, kind of rusting away because I totally messed it up. But it was a start. I think I was 14 whenever I began to make instruments. No, I was probably 13 actually. Yeah. I was exposed to the didgeridoo in the Renaissance Fair.
Okay.
Whenever someone made it out of bamboo, and I was like, "Ooh, that's different." You know, like I've never heard of a wind instrument become a rhythmical instrument. Those were two things I never thought was possible. So I was like, "Okay, that's different. I wanna explore this." And at the time, I was kind of getting into the rhythm of music. I've always explored melodies, but never rhythm. And so this is a different aspect of music that I was interested in. So I got this didgeridoo for like $30, you know, and played it, got used to it, started learning it. And I was like, it's just a tube. I literally can go outside, pull up a piece of PVC pipe, and play it like a didgeridoo. And I was like, how hard could this be? I want to make one. Started making them. And, I mean, yeah, I have like probably 4 big ol' agave didgeridoos in my shed right now.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what would you say sparked your interest in making stuff? Because not every 13-year-old makes musical instruments in their backyard.
Yeah, that's true. And whenever I was little, I'm a very artsy person to begin with. I draw, I make poetry, I make music, you know. And in Thule, it's such a small town with very little to offer. That adds a sense of boredom that leads to creation, right? Boredom is the mother of creation. And like, whenever you have nothing to do and you are given a pile of mud, right? I began to make little clay sculptures. I made little clay snowmen, you know, and I was little at the time, and, you know, little things like that. You're a kid, and your mind can do whatever it wants because it doesn't know limitations like an adult would associate limitations to.
Do you feel like this outlet of making stuff was a channel for your imagination and creativity? Were you a very creative kid growing up?
Yeah, I was the different kid, you know? I was the one who would be content with getting a little toy and then going in the corner and just kind of playing with it. I wasn't very quiet. I mean, I was very quiet. I wasn't very loud like a lot of the other kids I hung out with. You know, like I was kind of kept to myself and I did my own thing.
So how did you experience that transition into a more classical, traditional setting through the cello, your experience in the orchestra?
Mm-hmm. So, you know, and from going like playing like a child and just doing whatever, I became to this very structured music, right? It had to be played a certain way because it's always been done that way. You have to play it and no other way else. I didn't really care for that, but I did it anyways because I wanted a good grade in that class. And, you know, I learned it. I did whatever because it was what was expected of me. But that was only for the cello. I've self-taught everything else. You know, I tried piano lessons, but I didn't like that control. And, yeah, pretty much the internet taught me. And that's the beauty of the internet. It is so accessible, and you can get so much information just at your fingertips, you know? And I feel like that's really the only thing I use the internet for. I don't use it for video games. I don't use it for any of that because I feel like that's just a waste of life. I might as well be making something or learning something. So with the internet came knowledge of music theory and notes and chords and instruments, and that's how I began to learn piano. And the cello was taught to me through, you know, school. So, and this is a good thing that I was thinking of. So the piano teaches you the fundamental, what's the word? Like what music is. It teaches you what notes are, it teaches you how notes work with one another, chords, harmonies, melodies, rhythms, all that. And yeah, you can get emotion out of it, but I feel like you can't get emotion like you can get out of a cello. You can, with the bow of the cello, that's where a lot of the magic happens because then that adds volume, that adds this texture, and your hand works as vibrato to give it the singing quality. That's something you can't do with the piano.
Right.
And so I feel like the cello teaches you emotion and true passion behind music and what it's meant to communicate, because it's like singing. And the piano teaches you the true structure and the basics of music theory. And I mean, not even basics, it gets really complex. But it teaches you the very fundamental building blocks of music. Yeah. And if you learn these two things together, I think that was really what led me to basically pick up any instrument I need to now and know how to play it, because I understand how it works. I understand how it feels. I understand how I can use it to communicate. And so that's my approach on music.
When you discovered the Rav and then the handpan, you made sense of it right away. And that attracted you to it.
Yes, definitely. I saw that it had keys, kind of. Like, each note was like a key on the piano, but it could also sing like a cello, And I thought, whoa, that's what really drew me to it, because of how versatile it put those two things together into one. And I thought that was beautiful. And so I guess that's probably why I was called to it so much. It was versatile yet limited. It harmonized so well and it sung so well. And it was almost structured, but yet very liberating and free.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
you've been playing handpan for a couple of years now?
Actually, last week I've had the handpan for 1 year.
1 year?
1 year.
Oh.
So, like I said, all that table drumming really pulled off.
Yeah. And you've already had a lot of great experiences.
Oh, totally.
You've mentioned busking. What are some of the other settings that the handpan has brought you into?
Recently, and where I discovered you, was at the yoga studio.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you played at the yoga studio, and we all meditated with like some sound healing and all that. And that was, I don't know, I saw you on Facebook, and this one thing led to another in this synchronistic way, and we ended up eventually meeting. But that same yoga studio has invited me to start playing there.
Cool.
So I started talking to Crystal, and the owner of the yoga studio. And she's like, yeah, we should totally get together and kind of play what me and Sylvan did. And I was like, yeah, let's do it. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. And we also were part of a drum circle as well. Just this little hole in the wall place to just go into the mountains, watch the full moon rise, and be a bunch of hippies. But Serena also hooked me up with some other guy who knows a really cool recording studio. It's literally like a pyramid, and it goes underground, I think. And there's a recording studio in there. And he says, yeah, he's like, I'm into sound healing. And he's like, you have a sound healing instrument. And, I might probably talk to him later, but, I haven't really gotten into it. But yeah, I'm so new to the handpan right now. So things are barely starting to happen, but things are happening. Synchronistic events. I'm meeting people. It's magical. It truly is.
And it's a good place to remind everyone that you are 16 years old.
Yes, I'm 16.
the amount of experiences and connections that you've had before the handpan, but also through this instrument over the past year, is really remarkable. Obviously, your passion is only increasing as I can hear
definitely. It's a bottomless pit.
What are the things that get you most excited about the instrument? Maybe some of the projects that you envision for the future with the handpan.
So right now I'm trying to make handpans, even though I've made a shell of one. It's literally just a sculpture that looks like a handpan, but it sounds like how you would expect banging on a barrel would sound, Yeah. I didn't understand how the mechanics of a note works, but I'm making one, and I'm hopefully going to do this over the summer, is make a Caribbean drum, because dimples add another huge level of expertise. So Caribbean drums, I think, will be a lot more simple. So that's going to be one big project I'm going to try to make, and in order to introduce myself slowly into the handpan. More didgeridoos. I might have a customer actually. So this little kid who kind of got into the didgeridoo, and my dad was like, "Hey, this kid is into what you're making," and I was like, "Oh yeah," and I was like, "Let's show him one of my instruments," and So I might go over there and I might make a little one for him. He's probably like 9 years old, so I'll make a little, like, I don't know, 3-foot one. So, and working with agave kind of showed me a lot of new sounds, right? Because it resonates very well because of how thin the wood is and very soft, yet like the inside's really soft and it resonates and gives it this very soft quality, yet the outside's very hard, so it adds a very sturdy feel to it. And I think I could make a string instrument out of it. Like, I can make an upright bass if I wanted to. I think that would be really cool. I don't know agave stock, but it's still in the works. I need to figure out how I would have to do it, but it's an idea that crossed my mind, or some kind of string instrument. Like, I think it would be a cool sitar.
Yeah.
Or something different like that. Because the base of an agave, how an agave grows is, at first it creates this basal rosette of a bunch of leaves that are very spiny. And so they'll grow for it's also known as a century plant, because they'll stay like that for a century or so. I don't know. They take a while to bloom. Eventually, it'll send out this big old stalk, right? And it puts all of its life energy into creating this stalk to reproduce, along with making little pups, which are like little cuttings, And eventually, once it creates the stalk, it gets pollinated, it creates its seeds, the entire plant will die, right? And at that point, I come in. I'll harvest the plant, right? Spread its seeds, and I'll leave the pups there intact, and so they can keep on reproducing. I'll strip the where the leaves are, and it's this big old bulb, right? And that bulb I can use like as the base of the instrument. That's like the resonation chamber, right? So like the end of a sitar, and the neck could be, or like the big old stalk could be the neck. And all these ideas are kind of flowing through my mind right now, but it's something I'm willing to try definitely in the future, maybe over the summer. So I'll see what I can do. Yeah.
So much potential.
So much potential.
Your future is bright, Jaden.
Definitely. Thank you. And it's just, I could go down so many different paths, and right now I'm just trying to go through all of them, just to see what I can do in this short time while I'm alive, and see as much as I can learn, experience as much as I can experience, and get as much wisdom as I can learn. And so, I don't know, that's kind of my goal in life, is just to experience life. That's my philosophy. There's no need to be worried about anything. Just live it. That's part of being human, So
it's good to hear that coming from you. You are wise for your age. You're very mature.
Thank you.
And if anyone can succeed at living this life the way you describe it, well, I think you're well on your way with this kind of curiosity and enthusiasm. And I just really can't wait for you to meet some of the folks within the handpan community too. Mm-hmm. We talked about Colin Folk earlier today. I think you would get along very well with him. And I'm just really excited and eager to see what you come up with.
Me too.
And is there a way you're going to document some of your progress, your experimentations along the way? I
actually am currently. I've documented my didgeridoo project. I made flutes out of cane that's grown in a creek right by my house. I'm currently making the handpan, and I'm making a video documentation of that. I'm posting a few of these videos on YouTube. Okay. Right? I need to get that YouTube channel better, because right now it only has 2 videos up. But that's basically where I'm posting a lot of my stuff. Mostly on Instagram. That's where all my stuff is, right? I condense my videos into little Instagram videos.
Yeah.
But that I'm slowly documenting things, all my projects, all my instruments I'm making, the things I travel, the things I see.
Yeah.
And the music I make. I'm slowly getting into it, but it's, getting somewhere social media wise, but mostly I just play to play for people live. I don't really go onto social media all that much, which is probably a big good thing that a lot of people need to do.
Yeah.
It's something I'm trying to do, and I'm getting better.
Yeah.
So,
well, I'll be sure to get all these links and to put them in the show notes for this episode.
Oh, yes, definitely.
So you mentioned playing live and playing for people, that community aspect. It seems important to you. Describe your experience performing, sharing the music in person.
Yeah. So in person, like I said, you end up bringing in a lot of really cool souls, right? I've met the owner of guitar shops. I've met a lot of hippies. I've met and touched a lot of people's souls, and you just make a lot of good friends, that you only meet for like a second, but you make friends right off the bat with the one common interest of music,
Yeah.
and that's something beautiful. And this is a good story. I was busking in Old Town Scottsdale, right? And it was a decent day. I've made like probably $5 right now. It's starting to get hot. I was about to pack up, but I was like, I'm just going to play for a little bit. And I know this little old homeless lady was just kind of sitting there watching me, and I'm like, all right, that's cool. I got a little audience. And eventually I packed up and began to leave. And she started flagging me down like, hey, come here. And so I go over there, and she's going through her basket of stuff, and she pulls out $100 in cash. And I was like, no, I'm not going to accept this. And she's like, take it, please. And I'm like, I could care less about the money. I was like, I just want to share it. And she insisted. So I didn't want to be rude, but that was crazy. It was so insane. And I did not expect that at all.
You touched her.
I did.
I mean, that's the thing. That you being out there, sharing your gift, sharing your passion, just engaging with the world around you. That's inspiring.
Mm-hmm.
I think you give me hope for the future when I tend to get cynical. But
no, me too. To be honest, I see the way people are. But
yeah, it's really cool you had that experience. It is kind of fun to get a really big tip.
Yeah.
I remember when I first went out busking, I was 17. So you discovered the handpan at a younger age than I did.
I probably discovered it when I was 13, then began to pursue it when I was 14, 15.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got my hung in 2007. So I was 17. My cousin had loaned me one of his hungs the year prior. But the first experience I had busking was in the south of France. I took a vacation with my family, and my dad, my brother, and I went out and sat by the sort of the seashore and started playing music. And there was a Swiss guy, ironically, who stood there the whole time. He stayed the whole evening, and at the end he gave me a €50 tip. Which,
wow.
When you're that age, like you're not working necessarily yet, or you don't have a paycheck, so it's it doesn't even completely register. But like, I'll tell you right now, like as a working adult, I rarely give people €50, $50, $100 tips.
Yeah.
Like that is a profound experience when that happens.
Definitely.
So I think, that it just highlights that this was a powerful moment that you had. Let's talk about busking for a second, because it's interesting, right? In the short history of this instrument, it seems like hung players and then handpan players have naturally gravitated towards taking their instrument out into the city, into their community. And these folks, you and I, and just the multitude of people that make up this loose handpan community worldwide, they're not street performers, right? Like it's not like this demographic, this psychographic was meant to go out into the streets and play as street musicians. It's something else. It's maybe a compulsion that we've experienced this art, this beauty, and we just have to share it.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. It's like, it's so rare. I've only seen 3 handpan players just naturally, while just going on my day-to-day base, but I'm always traveling and going everywhere, and a lot of people don't do that. So I have more exposure. But I saw Chad. I saw the guy that really turned me on, gave me my first handpan experience. Some other girl who was also in Sedona, and she had a golden one. I think it was made out of stainless steel. It was very pretty, but I don't know. I never really talked to her. I just kind of like came up to her. I had the Rav at the time. I was gonna busk there, but she kind of had the spot, and I was like, no, I'm not gonna take that. I'll let her play. And so, and then I met you. You're the third handpan player, and then you're introducing me to everyone. So
yeah, it's fun. We had Dan Price pass through Phoenix a couple months ago, so you got to join us for an epic little almost mini gathering.
Yeah, it was a little mini gathering
at my place here.
Yeah.
We had 13 or 14 handpans?
I think it was 15 handpans in total. Yeah, and 3 handpan players.
Wow. Yeah. Well, again, as I said, it's super inspiring to just hear about your story, your approach to the instrument. It just reminds me of something that was said in a previous episode with Mary Mosley. Like, you just see it all as potential. You're just pumped up, and you're excited to go out there and make stuff. And I'm just tremendously excited to see where that continues to take you.
Yeah, it's crazy because I don't even know where I'm going. I'm just going with wherever life takes me.
Yeah.
And that's really freeing. I feel like a lot of people are stressed because they want to go one place, and they're stressed because they're trying to get to that one goal. But honestly, I don't have a goal in mind. I just want to live, and just have a fun life. And that's a very stress-free life. Yeah, you're going to have troubles on the way, but you learn from that. You learn from pain. That's the beauty of being human. I feel like if we never hurt, you are never going to be happy. You have to have the yin and yang. You have to contradict. And you learn, and you get wiser, and you learn lessons. And that's something that I learned after Houston, That was a big lesson I've learned after Houston. I feel like I've grown a lot wiser because of it. I think it's shaped me to the way I am now. It was that insight.
Well, again, for your age, that's a profound insight. And I think you're totally right. I also see the power of creativity in your life, and how you mentioned it helped you to come out of your shell. Oh, definitely. Pun intended. And I relate with that. I think it did the same thing for me. So yeah, I really appreciate you being on the podcast. Oh, thanks so much for sharing your story, man.
It's such an honor to be here. This is my first thing of it, really exposure to the handpan community. So this is a big thing for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah, and it's a wonderful community out there, and I'm looking forward to the next gatherings that maybe you'll be able to join.
Oh, I sure
in
hope
the
so.
Southwest, for you to bounce off ideas and meet some of the folks who make this instrument, because you're on your way to making possibly them as well.
It's very slow, and it's going to be a huge learning curve and probably a lot of money, but it's going somewhere.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, this little community that we're a part of is made richer because you're in it. And so welcome on behalf of all of us. I mean, a happy 1-year anniversary of playing handpan.
Thank you so much.
And I can tell you have been playing for over 10 years. I think it's been since 2006, 2007. It continuously gets better. So I'm excited for you to experience that too.
Yeah, it's really exciting to, see whatever this instrument takes me.
Yeah.
And wherever my passions go, I'll follow, and wherever I end up is where I end up. So be it,
Cool. Well, happy to share a bit of the journey with you.
Cheers.
Let's play more handpans.
Let's do it.
All right. Thanks again, Jaden.
Thanks.
Well, this is Jaden's story. What's yours? I stumbled upon a quote recently from an author named John Piper. It was in an article about work and productivity that he wrote, quote, "And finally, find your niche. That is, find the thing you do love to do. With all your weaknesses and all your strengths, put most of your energies and your love there." End quote. If you'd like to continue the conversation online, you can join our Facebook group, the Handpan Podcast Community. And if you'd like to help support this show, you can get really cool merch at thehandpanpodcast.com and click merch. The most popular design is a wacky illustration of a green alien playing the handpan. It's available on t-shirts, hoodies, tank tops, shower curtains, and more. That's it for this episode. Thank you for listening, and talk to you in the next one.